I am so happy to be with you today. I know that some of you may have heard about our experience here in Mississippi, deemed as the Mississippi Miracle. Now, I want you to know that I am a deeply spiritual person and I believe in miracles and I have witnessed miracles in my personal life, but this was not a miracle. Miracles are unexplainable. This is explainable. So, this is why Monica and I chose to give today's luncheon the title of Mississippi Momentum. Now, our growth in Mississippi was not from one single push that started the role. There were several pushes. And so I'm going to share some of those with you today and talk about some of those motions that created that momentum for change in Mississippi. Now, while I recognize the intervention of the divine in our experience, our success is explainable. So I'm happy to share with you today some of those experiences. So I want to start today with just a look at some of the key legislation that began our movement in Mississippi. Early in our movement, we had the Early Learning Collaborative Act. And so that established our first state-funded pre-K programs. And those went to some underserviced areas in our state. And those early learning collaboratives are comprised of school districts, Head Start organizations, even child care centers and private nonprofit organizations. And moving forward in Mississippi in 2021, our state legislature also decided to double its investment in our state-funded pre-K program, so that it helps to recognize the need for that early learning, and it started some momentum in 2013, but we're continuing that momentum as we continue to move forward. Now, one of the biggest pieces of legislation in Mississippi that we can contribute to part of our success is our Literacy-Based Promotion Act. And so with the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, that is including what I do. I'm a regional literacy coordinator, and so I coach coaches and I also coach teachers at the school level. And the goal of this act is to improve reading skills for kindergarten through third grade students so that every student is completing the third grade reading at or above grade level. Now, in addition to the goal of the Literacy-Based Promotion Act, part of that law also requires that kindergarten students be assessed at the beginning of the school year and at the end of the school year. So this helps to determine their readiness coming into kindergarten, and then it helps to determine their growth while they've been in kindergarten. Now, this data also gives us information regarding the percentage of our students who are coming to school ready, right? As 5-year-olds. So this also requires not just kindergarten to be tested, but we have universal screeners that are given to all of our students in kindergarten through third grade at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and at the end of the year. And so that helps to determine the student's progress in reading and can also, red flag for any reading deficiencies. Now, we have 6 approved screeners. Our schools have to use one of those 6. The largest percentage is in like STAR Early Literacy or STAR Reading. That's one of our screeners. A good percentage of our schools use those. iReady or NWEA MAP. We have a few other ones like iStation, Fast CBM, and MClass are also part of the approved screeners. Now, interestingly, we had this big law in 2013 that started and that began our progress in Mississippi. But in 2016, there was an amendment to the LBPA, to our legislation, and that included a change that involved an individual reading plan for students who were indicated through the screener that they would have a reading deficiency or that they had a reading deficiency. And that also included a level up for us. So Mississippi, for our third graders to move on according to our summative assessment, for them to move on to fourth grade, before 2018, they had to score a level 2. Well, the 2018 and 2019 school year, it leveled up to a level 3. So right now, our third graders must pass that assessment with a level 3. So that is the largest part of our legislation. But I also wanted to share that we do have some dyslexia support in our state. And so we have some local adoption policies that include screening kindergarten and first graders for dyslexia. And there's also some funding to go along with that for our students who have a ruling in dyslexia, and that can be seen by a dyslexia therapist. Now, past the legislation, once the legislation was put into place, we do have some steps that we have initiated and have included in Mississippi to continue this growth. So I want to outline just 4 manageable, comprehensive steps for you guys that can be an indicator of our gains here in Mississippi. So we really worked hard and are continually working hard to create that shared literacy vision. All right, that started with the legislation, but and I'll just use Monica's words when she and I were preparing for this. She said, every time that I talk with you guys, you share a common language. That is evidence of this literacy vision. And so in our Department of Literacy, we work to come together to support teachers and students, but we also work to come together and maintain that common language and maintain that common vision. So that's the great equalizer for us. This LBPA is that great equalizer. Because we have a law here in Mississippi, there's no question about what is required for our students in early learning in kindergarten through 3rd grade. Now, we also work to cultivate teacher capacity. I'm going to explain this a little bit more in just a few moments, but that is our Mississippi Department of Education coaching model. So that works through coaches. We're kind of like the boots on the ground at the schools, all right? And we know that the training, building this teacher capacity, is steeped in the science of reading. So we have good training in the science of reading for our coaches, and then we're able to push that out to our teachers as well. So we start with schools who are on full support, and then we have like a gradual release. So they start as full support, and then once their scores continually improve, then they move down to a limited support. Now, there's more of this common language here when we're talking about professional development. So that's a 3rd step that I want to include today. And that professional development is state provided, and it is we started through letters first, and we are continuing now with our support with our partners at AIM to continue that statewide professional development. Again, that helps with that common vision, right? Everyone has the opportunity to take part in that training that is open to every teacher, every K-3 teacher across the state. So we don't want to leave out our families, though. All these other pieces include like the state level leaders and school leaders and teachers and things like that. But we also recognize the importance to have our families as partners. So we also include some things I'm going to share with you in just a few moments, like literacy nights for families, some initiatives to help families better understand what our process here in Mississippi is. So let's dive just a little bit deeper and take a closer look at some of these steps that are continually helping us in Mississippi to improve literacy outcomes. Now, the LBPA, our Literacy-Based Promotion Act, that is our driving force here in Mississippi. Remember, that's that great equalizer. It's a requirement, so there's no question about that. Now, it really includes, though, some other steps under that educator training that I mentioned briefly. That is our statewide literacy professional development. Our coaches take part in that too. They are also trained, and they are also able to conduct professional learning communities, for those teachers who are involved in that statewide training as well. So in Mississippi, for our coaches, we assign literacy coaches to our lowest performing schools, and we deem them literacy support schools. And so because they're literacy support schools, they get the support of an in-person coach 2 to 3 times a week if they are assigned a coach. Now, we understand that early identification is critical. Research has indicated that for a very, very long time, and we keep a focus on this. So through the implementation of our kindergarten readiness assessment, and when we screen those kindergarten through third grade students 3 times per year, that helps with our early identification. I always like to bring out the fact when people ask me about our law in Mississippi, they'll, sometimes, not everyone, but sometimes they'll say, tell me about your retention law. Well, I stop right there and I'm sure to clarify that it is not a retention law. It's a prevention law. So we chose to go prevention over retention. That's why all of these things are in place. The screeners, the, making sure that we're looking at focusing on early identification. And so because it's prevention over retention, it still includes other pieces besides the screener, besides coaches. It includes interventions, after school programs, summer programs for students, good cause exemptions for students who might fall into that category for us. And we also have retesting opportunities for our students in third grade. Now, I mentioned a moment ago about the individual reading plans that was amended a few years ago in our law. And that is for our students who have a reading deficiency. And that is indicated again through that screener. And so those individual reading plans can begin as early as kindergarten. And it's just a very specific plan according to what the student's deficit is. We administer a screener, then we can administer a reading diagnostic to really kind of drill down to find out what that deficit is. And then finally, like I shared a moment ago, we have a robust campaign to include parents and to educate them as well about the science of reading, so that those parents then are equipped with the needed resources to help their children at home. And I'll share some of those resources with you in just a few minutes. So now I want to share some specifics about my role. Really, the coaches are the personal piece to our professional growth here in Mississippi. Now, our coaches are hired at the state level. The district does not hire them. A school does not hire them. Now, our schools, many schools and many districts in Mississippi do have district coaches or school-based coaches, but the MDE coach is hired at the state level. And we are given exceptional professional development, continual, all throughout the year. And we're equipped to support our teachers in the classroom, but also to support administrators and even district leaders in our role. So we really try to spread that support out and individualize those components to what our teachers and what even our administrators need. Now, this is where I live, so I'm really happy to be able to share some of my roles and some of the things that I get to do each day with our teachers in Mississippi. Now, as a coach, our goal is always to improve and sustain that student achievement. And so we have some ways that we do that. And when we look at, supporting our teachers, it's not a cookie cutter, right? Because we're all individuals and we all need differing pieces of support, differing levels of support. Now, we know that in Mississippi, and not just in Mississippi, we know across the nation that teachers are the true heroes in our classrooms. And so coaches are not evaluative. Our job is the supportive arm of the department. And so we're able to go in and support those teachers and school district administrators. And so we want to provide that school-wide culture for learning. And that includes all stakeholders. Okay, we do a lot of parent nights ourselves with our schools. We do a lot of district training for professionals and administrators there in the district, and we even do regional trainings. So if you're involved in educating children, then we can be that part of support for you. Now, we also understand that building capacity for our coaches was important. And we also understand that when we do that, we base it on the science, right? And so in Mississippi, we started with training in the science of reading because we knew for the science, that was what would keep us grounded in the research. And we would again, that's another common piece of our goal. Now, We want to make sure that we are enhancing and refining reading instruction and interventions, that we target instructional coaching using that gradual release program, or that gradual release process. So, as teachers continue to grow, as schools continue to grow, then the coach is kind of able to work his or her way out of the school because they are sustained and they're able to do that on their own. Now, we also want to be sure that we highlight some things in this area, because in these years of coaching and working through things in Mississippi, we are correcting some of our missteps from the beginning of the initiative. And that includes, as administrators, as collaborative partners as well, and intentional knowledge building for administrators. So that's why now with AIM, we have a leadership course that our administrators can go through, where they do get information and they do get the content of the science of reading, but they also get that support in implementing that on an administrative level. All those pieces are vital. Now, as I've talked to you just a moment about the science and making sure that we started there, I want to share with you where we are now in Mississippi and what our movement looks like. Now, we have began several years ago training and preparing for the implementation of high quality instructional materials. You'll hear me reference this as HQIM, and I've kind of made it my own noun, and I can make it plural HQIMs. All right, so that's how you'll hear me. That's how you'll hear me say it. It may not be in the dictionary, but I've just kind of made it my own. We make sure that these materials are aligned to our Mississippi College and Career Readiness standards, that they are externally validated, they're comprehensive, and they're engaging. All right. So this is how we have continued that journey, where we started with the law, then we moved, into that capacity building with the science. And now we're able to help support administrators and leaders at the school level to implement these HQIMs, because we are not about stopping in Mississippi. We're not about stagnating. And so this was a natural next step for us. And when we begin this shift, I can tell you personally, as a coach, as I took in the information and, took in the training, what really spoke to me the most in this area was equity for our students. Every one of our students in Mississippi and across our nation should have equitable access to high quality material, complex grade level text, to prepare them for what their future would hold, whether it's college or whether it's career. All right. So let me share with you just a little bit about those shifts. Now, it takes all of us, right, to focus on all of these areas within instruction to ensure equity and access for our students. So these shifts, plus our work in foundational skills, all right, that is how we can break down what should be going on in our reading and language arts classrooms. So HQM can be used to identify areas of strength and opportunities for growth, and they are sequentially mapped. We know that research indicates that reading should be taught in a sequence, right? It should be explicit. It should be sequential, right? And it's cumulative. And so our HQIMs include all of this. Now, if you would like to scan that QR code, that's going to take you to Achieve the Course document that further explains some of these shifts that you see here on the screen. And so as we work toward this, it's not about one or the other. It's not about foundational skills or decoding or language comprehension. It's both. We understand through the science of reading that we need both portions of what we know as the reading rope, that decoding or word recognition portion, and the language comprehension portion. And because of that, our HQIMs are comprehensive. So that means it includes, they include all of those. All right. So how did that happen? Okay. It has not been an easy thing, let me just tell you. But we did, again, have a very explicit plan on how to roll this out, all right? So we started by just developing our evaluation rubric. Now, we had some training on how to do that, but we have our own rubric for evaluating our materials. And so that included state leadership, that included partnerships in our state that included teachers or administrators. Ed Reports was part of that, and additional experts. So we had some guidance there, but we were able to create our own rubric. Now, phase 2, what that looked like was a vetting process. So we had some materials for MDE, and the state considered the adoption of some of these materials. Now, we began to review these, and when we released the review, a call for reviewers, we had over 280 educators in Mississippi to apply for that, and 70 of those reviewers were accepted, and they went through a critical review of all of these materials. And it's not just K3, so this expands K12 in our state. And so we once that process was done, we recommended some of the materials that went through this vetting process. And now, where we are in phase 4, we are continually pushing that out to our schools in our state. All right. Our districts in our state are sovereign. They have the opportunity to choose what the curricula that they would like. And so in Mississippi, though, we know the importance of HQIM, and we understand that we want this to be accessed by all of our students. So we are in the process of continuing to support that implementation for all of our students. Now, that rubric, it was a tool used by our educators here in Mississippi to create that recommended list. Now, they were reviewed in grade bands for foundational skills, K2, 3 through 5, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. Now, in Mississippi, we did not choose which curricula to review, and we can only review what was submitted by the curriculum companies. And so our reviewers spent hours participating in this professional learning first, and then moved into working through what we call the gateways. And so we looked at the rubrics to kind of put them in buckets, or to put these pieces in buckets, and we call those the gateways. So to be considered an HQIM in Mississippi, a curriculum had to meet or partially meet the expectations of each of these gateways. And they had to achieve an overall 80% score in alignment to the rubric indicators. Now, this was the priority here. And in fact, there was a specific process for this. If the curriculum did not meet Gateway 1, it was not reviewed for Gateway 2 or 3. So Gateway 1 was truly a gateway because the review process stopped there after that. Now, I always like to share this with educators, community members, because first of all, it kind of shows my age a little bit. Some of you might remember the BlackBerry. And so as we train our leaders in HQIM, this is a great connection. All right. So we want to make a meaningful connection to them. And this one is a funny one and a vital one. And it's very relevant. And so when I think back to when I had a BlackBerry, I loved it, but it only had service sometimes. All right. It didn't always, sometimes it did, but it didn't always provide, and it wasn't always reliable. But now we have an iPhone, right? And so think about if you needed to go on a work trip and you had a BlackBerry, you had to take the BlackBerry, take your computer with you, take your camera with you. But now really we can take our iPhone with us and have everything that we need, right? And so that's kind of how I show that shift between what we used to use for ELA materials and what we have now. We don't have to piecemeal things together anymore. Just like our iPhone, everything is there, right? We don't have to carry the other pieces. That curriculum is comprehensive, and it includes everything. So we are in the middle of this push for HQIM and this support for implementation. And y'all, we are seeing great results in increases in proficiency in reading. So it's very encouraging to us, and we are excited to be able to give students access to what we know that they need and what we know that they deserve. All right. Now, we've taken a little glimpse into the statewide and classroom support here in Mississippi, and I want to just kind of finish out by shifting outside of our classroom to the support that we give our parents. Okay, so our support for parents is really built around our campaign to build strong readers. And right now, part of that campaign is know your child's reading score. What we have found is that parents want to be involved. You know, parents want to support their kids as best as they can, and we'll send home information to them. And sometimes that information might just might need a little extra area of support, and that's what this campaign is for. This helps us to share with parents, hey, look, your child scored this this number on a screener. What does that mean, right? Also, your child grew this much on a screener. What does that mean? All right, maybe they grew 30 points. All right, but are they on grade level or not on grade level? So we began this year to help support parents in a new way so that they could continually better support their students. We have our Strong Readers, Strong Leaders website that is open for it's open access to anyone, but it really helps to educate parents about the importance of literacy, and it gives them resources to help their kids at home as well. So this site includes resources, activities, and information on for parents and children from birth to grade 5. Now, we share this information in many ways, but one of the ways is through our regional families as partners. Those are parent nights that we're able to give this information to them, and other information about our law, about our process in Mississippi with structured literacy, coming from the science of reading. And this, when we partner with schools and districts, it helps us to inform parents about the support and how they can be the best advocates that they can be for their children. We also partner with the Mississippi Campaign for Grade Level Reading. Again, that supports our goal here in Mississippi to have students reading at or above grade level by grade 3. And we also have a partnership with our public TV here in Mississippi. I get to be a part of that. That's one of my special projects as a regional coordinator. I work with MPB to coordinate lessons. It's a separate channel by itself. It's not our regular public broadcasting channel. It's a separate channel. And we have teachers and coaches who come in and film lessons on varying topics, because we use open sources. A lot of our lessons are from core knowledge, language arts. We also have teachers and coaches that use other open sources as well to teach lessons. We even have some that support adolescent literacy as well. So we are excited about that partnership. Now, for just to kind of close this out, I wanted to show you that information about parents, and then our professional development plan that still supports our schools and still supports our parents. We have literacy trainings for teachers. You'll see on this screen some of the things that we're doing right now, because we have our initiative with HQIM, but we also include a multi-tiered system of support for our students. We have our informational meetings. We have the Literacy Coach Academy in Mississippi, which really helps to support the school or district coach that schools and districts may have. And then we also have our adolescent literacy, not our adolescent, our annual literacy conference. We do have training in adolescent literacy as well. So some of those statewide trainings, this is some of the data from the trainings that we have done. You can see that over 22,000 teachers have been trained. And for this school year, we've had over 500 educators to be enrolled in some of our trainings. Now, our HQAM trainings, over 1,300 educators have been trained. And then this is some information about our presenters and attendees at our literacy conference here in Mississippi this year. Now, for our literacy nights for our families as partners, we've had over 500 attend in the fall of 2023. That's when the bulk of those are. And then we also have had district and school family literacy nights. We have the state initiate some of them, and then districts will come along and say, hey, well, we would like to have one here in our district or here in our region. And as far as the fall, we have fall of 2023, we've had over 700 attendees in those. So now I've given you just kind of an overview of all these pieces of our puzzle, or most of the pieces of our puzzle here in Mississippi. And again, we go back to that common language grounded in the science of of reading here in our Department of Literacy. And so this leads me into our partnership that we have with the AIM Institute. And so, Monica, I'm going to turn it over to you now, and I'll let you give our guests some information about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So AIM Institute is a division of AIM Academy. First, I'll give you an overview of the Academy, and then I'll talk about the Institute, as well as our work with Mississippi specifically. So the Academy is a 6th through 12th grade school located in Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. The students that attend the Academy are Tier 3 students with language-based learning differences. The Academy sets its teachers up for success by giving them the information they need on how the brain learns how to read, and then how the instructional practices that they use every day in the classroom have to be aligned to this research. This bridge of research to practice is a vital component of the AIM Institute, which is where I work. The AIM Institute is the sister arm of the Academy. We are a group of like-minded professionals that are all over the country. And at the Institute, we study the research, including the most up-to-date neuroscience that informs our practice. And then we work closely with our Research Advisory Board. This phenomenal board is comprised of some of the giants of reading research, such as Dr. Don Compton from Florida Center for Reading Research, Dr. Hollis Scarborough from the famous Scarborough's Reading Rope, Professor Nancy Hennessy, who created our Pathways of Proficient Reading course that I'll tell you about a little later, Dr. Linnea Airy, Dr. Julie Washington, just to name a few. So what we know that's important about all of this is that specialized teacher knowledge plays an indispensable role in building the literacy abilities of students. And Amanda, stay there. So what strikes me and makes me humbled to work with a partner like Mississippi and be an employee of AIM Institute is that both of our organizations get it. So Amanda, do me a favor and go back. Oh, okay, you got it. Thank you. We know that it takes a system to build and sustain literacy change. Starts with, first and foremost, like Amanda said, building teacher knowledge, coupled with bridging this knowledge to the research and the teacher's practice, in which we do this in Mississippi with a course in in-person trainings that they attend. The last piece of this system that we're building is having an enabling context. So Mississippi is doing this with their amazing coaching model that Amanda talked about, their recent focus on HQIM, and their commitment to having a diagnostic and prescriptive mindset. So they believe in universal screening. It is mandated, it is law. Progress monitoring, and then they use this data to make instructional decisions. And what I love most about working in Mississippi is that they're not afraid of change. So they have a continuous improvement cycle that when the data says that they need to change, they respond to that and they change. So this is the system that they're working, and it works for their state's context and community of learners. So your state's details may be a little different, but the formula is just crystal clear that it's knowledge first. Then we bridge it to the practice, which is what AIM's specialty is. And then we have this enabling context using data, coaching, HQIM, and then that mindset of responding to what their schools need, what their counties need, and eventually what their state needs all together. So how did we partner with Mississippi? So last year, I was part of the inaugural team that went down to Mississippi. I jumped at the opportunity. They didn't even have to finish the sentence. I was in it. I was there, right? So we delivered our signature course, which is Pathways to Proficient Reading, which is to teachers. And then we also offered Pathways to Literacy Leadership, which was for the leaders. So we believe in starting with the leaders first, because we know that it takes you to have a system and you have to have a vision first. And the leaders set that vision. I mean, they control the money, they buy the resources and all of that. So we want the leaders first, and then we want the teachers. So we were well aware that Mississippi had started this work previously before working with us. So last year, teachers who needed a refresher or who had not had a reading research course took PPR. This is a 55-hour graduate level course. The course is amazing because it teaches the science of reading. And then it immediately within that session helps to bridge the research to the educator's practice. Our courses follow adult learning theory, which is learn, practice, apply. So you'll learn a little bit, and then you'll do a practice activity, an interesting card sort, or a drop and drag abstract, and then you have to apply it with some of the scenarios from our students at the academy. So after the educators learn through our asynchronous modules, then they come to our secret sauce, which is really our community of practice meetings. The community of practice meetings for Mississippi were held in person, and this is where the magic happened. In the PLCs, the community of practice meetings focus on applying the research. So we discuss case scenarios, we model best practices, they model for each other, they collaborate in groups and come up with answers, and then we demonstrate that teacher to teacher, facilitator to teacher, or teacher to facilitator, because I got to learn so much. What I loved about my job in Mississippi was it was leading and enhancing the teacher's knowledge. And we got to talk about such nuanced questions and about their own case scenarios and what's happening in their classroom. So I was able to help connect the what, which is the science of reading, and the how to structured literacy. So how did this all, what was the reaction to it? So the reaction to it was really amazing. The teacher's reaction and my takeaway was that the design of how AIM Institute was partnering with Mississippi and collaborating and doing this asynchronous plus this in-person session sets the stage for other states work in the systems, especially if you're trying to really just start out in this work. I learned so much from my work in Mississippi because we got to brainstorm, we looked at data together. They would tell me about what they do with multilingual learners and where are the first places that they start. We discussed seminal research studies, such as Aries' article about two sides of the coin, how encoding and decoding are related, but not identical, right? We talked about background knowledge and the baseball study and how that is supposed to inform their practice and be usable for them. And inform their daily teaching with their students in the classroom, because we know that knowledge is not enough. If this doesn't get to the students, then we have lost our goal and you can't reach our goal of improved literacy outcomes for all. I was so thrilled to be able to bring back all of this learning because I'm from New York. I would go to Mississippi, I'd get all excited for a week, I'd come back, and then I'd tear my New York cohorts up because I would be like, well, in Mississippi, they said this. I was able to be a conduit so I can connect teacher to teacher, even if they were like almost like worlds apart. What I truly learned was that rural school systems, when I would be in Natchez, and urban school systems like New York City really have a lot more in common than they are different. And so the teacher's reaction and my takeaway was amazing, but we really want to talk about what the results were. And the results are pretty evident. Mississippi literacy leaders are seeing the fruits of their labor. Recently, AIM was humbled to see the latest data that was shared by the brilliant and soon to be Dr. Kristen Wynn, who is the Mississippi Department of Education literacy lead. The data is telling their story. Leader Wynn recently posted a tweet, and she showed that students with an AIM-trained teacher are significantly outperforming students who do not have an AIM-trained teacher in all 5 aspects of the critical components of literacy. Now, we are well aware that Mississippi educators are second to none in their knowledge base. They started this work like 10 years ago. However, what we find so proud and humbling is that the partnership between Mississippi and AIM is producing and continuing to produce these amazing literacy results in real time every day in the classroom, and is now showing in their student outcomes, continuing to show in their student outcomes. So what we want for every educator, for every teacher, is to have this AIM-trained knowledge that Mississippi is tweeting about, right? Because we know that AIM-trained teachers, AIM-trained leaders, and AIM-trained dyslexia specialists and interventionists put the evidence into practice every single day. So that helps momentum continue, right? So that we are definitely looking forward to continuing our partnership. We want to learn from our partners, like Mississippi Department of Ed, like New York City, who just came on board, like partnerships in School District of Philadelphia, where they're seeing amazing results and we're just written up in the paper, and across the nation, because the ultimate goal is that we want to strive to impact every school system, large and rural, urban and rural, large and small, so that we touch 1 million lives every day. And now I'll throw it back to you, Amanda. I have data on how the teacher knowledge grew, if you're interested in that, but Amanda's going to give us some key takeaways.
So it's explainable, right? So I just wanted to share just a few key takeaways with all of us today, and let you know that we started training teachers in Mississippi in the science. And if we had it to do over again, we would do it the exact same way. We would start with the science because we are better consumers then of any curriculum that comes our way. We're able to have the knowledge to understand, yes, that aligns with the science, or no, that does not align with the science. Now, something else that I want to bring out is that it was not a one fix and it was not a quick fix. Okay, we have non-negotiables in Mississippi that help support our schools, and those have contributed to our success. And so, again, it's a continual movement forward. So, because we are continuing, we have leaders, we have teachers, we have administrators who are forward thinkers. So, through that forward thinking, that vision, and that determination, that keeps us on track here in Mississippi to continually learn and continually grow. Now, our partnership with AIM helps keep that continual movement forward for our students. Look, this is what I stand on. I stand on the fact that literacy is a gift and it is also a human right. I believe that with every bit of my being. Our responsibility as educators is to do right by our students. And I take that responsibility very seriously, and Mississippi takes that responsibility very seriously as well. So I want to thank you for your time and attention today. Alex, I'm going to turn it back over to you. If we have any questions or any comments that we might have, I appreciate this opportunity to share, and look forward to our nation continually supporting our kids in literacy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. This was amazing. This was a great presentation. I know we had a couple of questions, Amanda, from a little earlier in your presentation. There was one question specifically about from Megan Zor. And by the way, at this point, if anyone would like to come off of mute, please feel free to do so and ask questions directly. You can also put them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat and handing questions over to Monica and Amanda. But Megan Zor specifically was wondering about the dyslexia screeners that you use in kindergarten. If you can say more about that, or tell them, just kind of share more about those screeners.
Sure, I'll be happy to. Those screeners take place at the end of kindergarten and then again at the beginning of first grade. And so those screeners include indicators, for dyslexia. They're not part of a diagnosis for dyslexia. We started off with just one screener once the law began to roll out. And now that is an area that is adjacent to literacy, but I don't work directly in that area. But I do believe now that they do have some other options for screeners for dyslexia. So the one that I'm most familiar with, they would go through a quick screener, and then if students needed more of a screening after that, they would have a different assessment that they could give, and then share that information with parents.
Amanda, that's really helpful. Thank you. So our school in Philadelphia uses the STAR assessment. Is it the STAR Rapid Automatic Naming, or is it a separate dyslexia screener?
We have multiple now, and it's been several years since I was in the classroom actually administering those assessments. The one that I did administer was developed through a college in our state, so I do not think it is that one. That one may be on our list now. I'm unsure about that, but you are definitely more than welcome to go to our MDE website, and there may be some information there on that.
And I think, Heather Fleming, you have had a question, I think.
Sure. Sorry, my internet is terrible right now, so I turned my camera off. Thank you so much for this presentation. So what I was wondering is, were there instructional requirements tied to the 2021 increased early literacy funding? And I ask because, as I'm sure you know, like Colorado initially didn't have requirements for access tied to their READ Act funding, and then later realized that they needed to add them because districts were choosing ineffective materials and training.
Are you asking specifically about the early learning collaboratives for pre-K?
Was that what happened in 2021?
That funding.
You mentioned, I'm sorry. So yes.
Yes, that funding that was doubled by our legislature in 2021, that was for our pre-K funding. And I am not super familiar with the pre-K process. We do have some leadership at our state level that could answer that question. I'm not sure what the requirements were to continue to get that funding or to start a collaborative, but there were very explicit guidelines.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
You bet.
I see another question in the chat from Rachel Robinson. Have parents shared what supports or practices they've appreciated or utilized the most?
Are you asking, have parents shared that? Is that what it was?
I think so, yes. Like, have they given feedback about what?
Yeah, have they shared what they like, and if you have any specifics of what they've appreciated?
Yes, they have. A lot of times they just share their feedback with us during those literacy nights. They'll come up to us and give us some feedback. And it's differing feedback, but we do have some information back from parents about the things that are most supportive for them. One of the pieces that I continually get good feedback on, is our Strong Leaders, Strong Readers website, because that can be accessed through a computer or it can be accessed on their phone. So it's not something that they're having to wait to go to a print shop to get or purchase or something like that. It is organized by grade level. And it is very helpful for parents to be able to access that. Now, in the past, my support schools have used that website during their parent nights. So teachers would go on the website and pull one activity or 2 to 3 activities from that website. They would model that activity for the parents, and then they would send home materials to do that activity at home with their students. And so it was very helpful for parents to be able to see it. And then sometimes they would have the materials that they could send home with that. Now, a lot of those activities are using materials that are just going to be found at the house. So it's not like you have to purchase this, this set of manipulatives or things like that. They're activities geared toward parents to be able to find in their home to be most supportive. And so that is one of the pieces that parents really, really like. And it's been really useful and helpful for them and for teachers.
Let's go to Linda Hughes, and then Jill will get to your question, and then Heather Fleming, I think you have another question. But let's start with Linda's question. Can you provide insights into the groundwork or organizations that advocated for the initial legislation?
Unfortunately, that was before my time. But I do know that we continually work with Excel in Ed. Actually, our state literacy director at that time of the legislation, when it was passed, she is now a part of Excel in Ed, and she works with them. And so I know that their key component, or one of their key drives, is to support states that are looking at legislation for that. And so I'm unsure of who all the stakeholders were during that involvement, but I do know that we still partner with Excel and Ed to help support that.
And Jill.
Hi, Amanda. I had sent you a message directly. I was wondering if the folks who don't make whose curriculum are not acceptable at step 1, do you give them feedback to help them improve curricula and then move into the system of step 1, 2, and 3?
Great question. I was not a part of that that process personally. It was happening while I was a literacy coach. However, I do know the rubrics were very specific, and I can tell you, in my experience with working with other curricula and other programs, there is a portion on our feedback that we have to give evidence as to why it did not meet. And so that could have been part of the response back to that. In other areas where I've worked with a company or a curriculum, we are able to share with them what the reasoning behind the score that they received, or why they did not receive that.
And do you see any improvement then in that? Do you see folks coming back on and able to meet those first steps?
Interestingly, they are, of course, they are very interested in what we have to say. We have not gone through a second process of vetting those HQIMs. That's going to be upcoming. That's coming up soon here in Mississippi. We had a time frame, that once they submitted, then we had that for a time frame, and then we'll have another process. So I am interested to see, what the companies bring to us. I can tell you our companies have been very receptive to us as coaches, and state leadership when we find some things that we have questions about. We are in contact with representatives and they do listen. And so it's really interesting, because I think, oh, look, we're coaches. We're just calling these big companies and they're listening. But, it's important for us to understand that whereas they are working to send their curriculum out, they are working also to back it with the science. And when we're able to find these things in the instruction that we have questions about or we want some more information about, we are able to contact them, and they are always very accepting of our questions and things like that. So that's been very interesting to me as a coach, because I would have never imagined that I would have contact with a curriculum company, but they are very open.
So we've two questions teed up. So Heather, I think you had another question, so I'd like to invite you to come off of mute, and then Tamanika, we'll get to your question next.
Perfect. This question is for Monica. Monica, thank you for your presentation here. So it feels like so much of this work has got to be so hard for teachers because it requires not only kind of knowledge and belief change, but sort of behavior change, which is hard. What, in your experience, what has gotten teachers, curious? What has gotten them to sort of buy into some of these changes in your experience working with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think throughout this process, and especially with working with Mississippi and being here in New York City and working with them, the largest school district, the most diverse school district, getting teachers to buy in really is going to be a nice to have. I like to create trust first and foremost. If I can trust you that I have your best intentions at mind, that this is not a blame game, that this is a marathon, not a sprint, and that we just need to enhance what we do and look and come to terms that we really haven't been doing literacy great across the country. So this is not a us versus you. This is all of us coming together and helping teachers understand. Personally, I think by just being able to explain the rationale why and how and what we need to do best, because like Maya Angelou said, when we know better, we do better, and taking that kind of an approach to it to build trust, because if I get your trust, then buy-in comes naturally. I'll have your buy-in. I also think that for me, teachers, my husband's a principal, and here in New York City. So it's a lot. This is a lot that we're asking them to do. So I just think showing them appreciation for the little things. And so some New York City people on the call, they can tell you, I actually go out and I give prizes. And I did it in Mississippi. I give prizes for if you're up to work, if you're up to speed on your work, if you're highly engaged, I give little bags to take home of funding awareness activities or little Starbucks cards and things like that. They just want appreciation. That gets you to trust them. That gets them to believe in you and believe the information that you're saying. And also, I think that coming in from Mississippi and another person from New York who they didn't know, telling them all of the same information, all of the science, all of the research that aligned, right? They hear it coming from both ends now, inside and outside. Here is this woman coming in and she looks different, talks differently, dresses differently, but hey, she's saying the same thing. And she's a practitioner, because I'm a speech language pathologist. And she's saying the same things that some of the same learning that I have to do, she had to do because she wasn't taught this in school. And so I think that's the point, like Amanda said, every teacher is in this business, not because we're paid highly well, we're not paid like rocket scientists, but we're expected to teach like a rocket scientist, right? But they need to be uplifted, and they need to be met where they are, and they need to be given space and grace. That's another one of my taglines that I say. We need space and grace. But now when I tell you, you got to do it. And if you don't, you're a part of my tribe. And if you don't know how to do it, don't let that stop you. Call someone. I'm not an expert. I have expertise, and I am confident that I have a network that will stand behind me, and I can help you find the answer, because every student is different. This is not a cookie cutter approach. So that's what I think most of all is trust and belief, and meeting them where they are, giving them space and grace, and convincing that this is a marathon, not a sprint, like Amanda has said.
Thank you.
Tamanika, you have a question. If you would like to come off of mute to ask, feel free. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and start reading it. So there was a question about the degree of cultural competency in the curriculum. So, were parents, community representation, educators, school board directors represented on the review panel for the curriculum review? And questions about how many students have been retained. So the demographics around like race and gender and grades. So let's start there and see, and then we can continue the question.
Sure, thank you. I will not be able to give any of the direct numbers for this. I don't have those right on hand, but I will be happy to point you into the direction of that Mississippi Materials Matters website. You might have shared it, Alex, already in the chat. So we do have considerations for the degree of cultural competencies in the curriculum. Part of our training included, hinging to some of that research that we know about mirrors, windows, and doors, and sliding glass doors, when it comes to a representative, being a representative to share cultural information and just cultural diversity. And so that is a part of those curricula. So those gateways will be able to tell you some more about that, some specifics about that. We had a large variety of people involved in that vetting process. And again, that website can give you some more specifics for that. We do have, students who are retained in our classrooms, but that's going to be in every classroom or in every state. We are going to have some retentions. Again, I don't have those specifics, but I do know that there was a research study. Now that I'm thinking through that, there was a research study I think that came out last year. Again, I don't have the direct link to it, but it looks specifically at our prevention as how those students who were retained, how they performed later on in their classrooms, and there was great success. And so we were excited to see that we know doing what's best for kids, when we're giving them the information that they need in the classroom, when we're giving them structured lessons and structured literacy to promote reading. When everything is pushed away, what we focus on is a child prepared to read, right? And can a child read and pull meaning? Because reading is not just calling the words, reading is pulling meaning from that text. And so are our children able to do that so that they can be successful in whatever path that they choose? And so we have to have guidelines. We have to have cutoff scores. We have to have all of these things. But what is most important is, are we preparing our students to be strong readers so that they can move forward in whatever they choose to do in their life? And so that's what we focus on here in Mississippi.
Hey, Alex, I want to just give a shameless plug for what we do as far as inclusive practices for the AIM course. So going to Mississippi, we knew coming in that was going to be something that we really needed to talk about. And that's not a last slide at the end of my show. And it's woven throughout it. We talked about dialect a lot in Mississippi, because Southern American dialect, I speak New Yorkese, I speak Southern American dialect, I speak academic language. And I see you in the chat, Simone, talking about Dr. Julie Washington. She's our expert that we partner with. She's actually my mentor. So when I was getting ready to go to Mississippi, we had several conversations as I talked about, I want to make sure that I get this right, that I phrase it right, that I know that this is what needs to be talked about. And we're not trying to change the way people speak. We're trying to teach them reading and writing. And what we implore teachers to do is just remember the context that you are and use what they bring to the table. Because language variation, we say that it is a on equivalency with language, right? Academic language, and it is. So if that's the case, you have to change the way you think about it. You got to change the way you speak about it. And that's a continual process that even someone who speaks dialect or language variation has to do. And so we went there with that. And I think of all the things that the greatest feedback I got was thank you for talking about that and not shying away from that and seeing me. Thank you for that, because it's okay to talk the way you talk. That's who you are. Bring your most authentic self. I want you to be that and teach kids how to read and respect them. You got to respect the language that they loved in. That's what we say. That's what we say at AIM. Got to respect the language that they're loved in. We're worried about teaching them reading and writing and using that language that they're loved in order to be able to do that. Use the similarities of that language, just like you would do with a child who speaks Spanish or French or a tree or African dialect. That's how you approach that. So.
That's great. I know we are over time, but I see Catherine, your hand up, so I'd like to invite you to come off of mute and ask your question if Amanda and Monica have a few more minutes.
Yes, thank you. Earlier you spoke about the legislative side or the legislative part in Mississippi to make this program work. How do we get our state legislators to listen to this and at least give it some consideration? Here in Chester, our children do very poorly in reading and in math. And we've been pushing certain organizations to get the reading levels up, but we don't have any support from the state. How did the state of Mississippi get involved, and how can we look to see if Pennsylvania can become involved?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, because as I mentioned earlier, that legislation really, again, was our LBPA was the great equalizer for us here in Mississippi. And while that, again, was before my time, I came on as literacy coach several years after the legislation had already been passed. So I don't know all the inner workings of how it began, how that legislation began. But I do know that it has been critical for us here in Mississippi because, again, it removes a lot of the guesswork. We know what is required. We know what is happening. So I sense your urgency there, and it is an urgent situation. And so I mentioned Excel in Ed. And so I know that they work with state level. They work with all types of different leadership, and so Excel in Ed might be an avenue if no one has explored it. It might be an avenue as far as looking into to see what kind of support they might be able to offer.
Thank you.
So as I mentioned, as you all can see, we are a little bit over time. So I want to thank Amanda and Monica for your time today and your excellent presentations. We had a lot of questions. I'm sorry that if we weren't able to get to all of them. I think we got to most of them, but also wanted to add that I will be sending out an email after the session, probably later this week, with a few of the resources that Monica and Amanda mentioned and some of the examples from Mississippi that they mentioned as well. And I see some links in the chat, so I'll be sure to go through those and add those to the follow-up email as well. But once again, Monica and Amanda, thank you so much for today. This was excellent, and I think a lot of people were able to learn a lot and perhaps generate some ideas about next steps for their own local context. So thank you both again.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. I've enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
Bye, everyone.